Hello, I'm Enzo, and can you beat Borderlands the pre-sequel with only the party popper? This run is exactly what it sounds like, and the rules are quite simple. I'll only be using the party popper as my weapon, and I'll be playing in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode at max level, which is the most difficult you can make this game. For gear, I'll be using a basic shield. Even worse, somehow, than the starter shield, an Acrobat Oz kit for insane air control, and it also gives a bit of speed after a butt slam. On top of that, the Kentuckerous Cowgirl class mod for a bit more pistol ammo and some extra shots after reloading. I have one party popper in each weapon slot. The first one has the dual prefix, so it fires more projectiles at the cost of more ammo. It's a bit weird with the shot multiplier, 11 instead of 7, but you get the point. The second one is fire rate, which is very likely the best prefix. Third is damage, and fourth is accuracy, which is absolutely worthless for this thing, but I wanted to put something there in the first place. I guess I also could have gone with mag size. In case you don't know what the party popper does, it's a unique bandit pistol that acts like a shotgun. It sounds really good until you fire it and get confetti. This gun has insane damage potential, but suffers from having almost no range, which is very unique for a Borderlands weapon. This gun has so little range, in fact, that it can't even hit deck 13.5 target dummies. That's how short the range is. It's ridiculous. You get the party popper from the second to last mission of Claptastic Voyage, from my favorite racist hot dog and party cat. Finally, for skills, this is gonna be a normal Nisha build, but I made a huge mistake by putting 5 points into Magnificent 6, which gives more damage to your last 6 shots. Yeah, the party popper is a bandit weapon, which means it has a huge magazine. Those points would have been infinitely more useful in Bottled Courage, but I changed that way later into the run. So how about we get this party started? Starting out in Helios Station, this is of course the tutorial level, so the enemies are going to be stupidly easy. So it's kind of unfair to say that the party popper is really good here, as pretty much any weapon layout is. Honestly, I'm gonna skip pretty much this entire level because there's nothing super interesting here. Well, except for an early warning of things to come. I mean, I shredded this fighter jet, but that's just a reminder. They will be enemies at some point that we're gonna have to face. Not very often, granted, but if you've played the pre-sequel before, you know what's coming. The only notable fight on the starting level of Helios is of course Flame Knuckle, but thankfully he's really stupid and targeting Jack, so I can just shoot him in the back where his extremely vulnerable fire tanks are, and yeah, it's pure critical damage. Kinda stupid if you ask me. On top of that, you get to see a tiny bit of the party popper's true power, at least with Nisha. Besides being able to hold 2 pistols, her kill skills are like insane steroids, and when I get all the buffs, like the damage, the critical chance, and fire rate especially, these things shred enemies at close range. It's only a slight shame that I'm not recording constantly. I just pause and unpause it whenever I need to show something important, because Springs actually bugged out here and kind of teleported, which was pretty funny. Since I'm already max level and max build, I decided to have a go at Iwajira. As you can see, it does not go well at all. It was perfectly fine when I tested this, but yeah, not in an actual playthrough. The primary reason for this is Nisha's pretty terrible survivability. I have no healing weapons, and a majority of my actual damage per second is kind of motion based, if you will. I think almost Krieg in Borderlands 2, where he's super strong once he gets his kill skills and can start shredding through waves of enemies. Nisha has the exact same problem. I can't get all of my kill skills from a single boss, meaning I deal next to no damage and have no survivability. But during my testing, when Iwajira spawned his little minions, besides being second wins, they were also great for kill skills, which let me shred him very easily. Now that we're past all of the super easy tutorial and melee enemies, the difficulty starts to ramp up quite a bit with actual bandits. And these are just bandits, not even super tough dull soldiers later on. You can already see the primary issue is my horrible choice of shield. Like, I have found it funny how the starter shield is technically better than what I chose. Though it has double capacity, it's also got, double recharge delay. Still, probably should have taken it instead. Naturally, the main problem when facing enemies with, guns is having to get close to them to actually deal damage. Almost like that's the entire issue with this weapon. And of course, that does not pair well with Nisha's relatively poor survivability. As a matter of fact, Nisha's survivability is essentially like Axton's grit from Borderlands 2. Every time you get hit by an enemy, there's a chance. I forget what skill it is, I think it's wanted, and one of the wanted skills that gives you a tiny chance to heal whatever damage you would have taken. But yeah, that's a tiny chance, and Healthgate, it's just a giant nightmare. On to the deadlift fight. This shows off another major issue with this build and the party popper. Well, okay, that is survivability, we all know about that. But remember, we're playing the pre-sequel, and normal guns aren't gonna be your only problem. Enemies have laser weapons in this game, which are extremely hard to dodge, as you can see here. I first got hit by one of Deadlift's homing shock balls, and then annihilated by a laser. I did not stand a single chance in this fight. So that's going to make things interesting, on top of Deadlift himself having a laser weapon. The solution to actually winning this fight is really simple. It's so stupidly simple, I should have thought of it in the first place. It's the circle strat. You should all know this by now. It's a little bit easier with pre-sequel because of a double jump, but yeah, you just run circles in the enemy and they can't really target you easily. I mean, it makes perfect sense, this is Borderlands after all, but yeah, I did not expect that to work so well. High off of that victory, I decided to go back and fight Iwajira again. This time, I played it a tiny bit slower, and honestly, it's almost luck at this point because he didn't do his crazy laser attack at the beginning, and I happened to get enough of those wanted heals to keep me alive. You can kind of see it, how I get health gated and then healed full instantly. It absolutely is just Axton's grit reskinned. Okay, but I also forgot up until now, I swapped to using the Celestial Lawbringer, which allows me to heal like 10% of damage dealt during Showdown, which is stupidly powerful, I have to say, and that's the other reason I stayed alive for so long. The main problem with Iwajira is that he's easiest to kill with elements like Cryo, that's usually what I would go for, and extremely hard to damage unless you hit critical hits. This is why, funnily enough, the Frozen Hail that he has a great chance to drop is amazing against him. But this exposes another one of the major problems with this whole build. I can only really deal damage, just like I was saying earlier, momentum, like trig and kill skills, so I don't deal much damage unless I have that crazy damage buff from all of my kill skills, including the critical chance. Critical chance is really what carried this fight, especially considering I literally ran out of ammo right at the end of the fight. That was kind of scary, not gonna lie. Okay, I know so far I've shown that the party popper kind of freaking sucks, but you have to admit the one area it excels in is close quarters combat. I mean, this thing just shreds through enemies like they're absolutely nothing. Of course, a big part of that is all of Nisha's skills and being able to dual wield them, but still, these things are godly when you get close enough to actually use them. But yeah, I still lack important things like survivability. That's the reason I use Moxie's Vibra Pulse as one of my main weapons. Healing from that gun is just so stupidly powerful. Perfect example right here. I killed all of the enemies, but I have no survivability and a corrosive dot took me out. Red Belly. They're generally not an issue, however, I kind of forgot about their one big mechanic. It's actually Red because she or he's on top, whatever. Red has bullet reflection, and considering red is like 90% helmet, and the helmet has said bullet reflection, let's just say the fight didn't go well. On top of that, I landed in the middle of the arena when I died, and I couldn't shoot out behind this cover, so that really sucked. Needless to say, the fight was not going well entirely because of this bullet reflection. Considering I have no good healing sources, it's still just the chance of healing after being shot by an enemy. Yeah, it was pretty bad. The only thing that really saved this fight is that Red Belly's weird in that I think after you get them to separate, the health or their separation doesn't save. So I was able to beat them the third time around. I'm not really complaining, I just wanted to note that their fight is very unique for sure. After that, there was literally nothing interesting in Outlands Canyon. I was able to pretty much run through the entire place, but in Outlands, well, actually I can't remember what the other level is. I know the first one is Canyon, but the other one is like Pumping Station or whatever. Yeah, I died pretty early on because of a dot. I swear that happens to me all the time in Borderlands games. Dots are the real killers, not the enemies. Besides that, this level is where I faced a lot of trouble with certain enemies. I mean, these turrets, for example. They absolutely shredded me, and well, it's pretty hard to get close to them without, falling into the void. To add insult to injury, my next attempt I got sniped instantly by a corrosive laser. There was also a fire one, but obviously the corrosive dot got me. That's just rude. Rubbing even more salt in the wound than those deaths, my game actually crashed, which sucks, but it's not even that bad because where I start out, it's actually possible to do some parkour and get over to this area. So, I mean, worse things have happened for sure. But I just keep dying in this level. The freaking Kraken that spawns on the ice lake got me because I had no kill skills and thus no damage. Hades Fall overall wasn't anything super special. A bunch of the levels, well, okay, it's a bit complicated. There are some close quarters areas and then there are some far spread out areas. Obviously, you can tell that the further away the enemies are, the harder it's going to be to reach them and kill them. On top of the unreasonable amount of baddie enemies here, it wasn't too bad. In the bosun fight, the primary shining issue is naturally my survivability, and the fact he creates like a shockwave attack around him whenever you try to get close, which is a slight problem considering I need to do that. And yeah, lack of healing, you kind of get the point. I died twice, but once I got my kill skills, those absolute steroids shredded him in a matter of seconds. That is the nice thing about this run. Despite how stupidly difficult it is very satisfying to see enemies just get melted by these things. Besides that, the rest of the levels were going relatively well. Of course, survivability, we already know that, but the thing that really sucks is just pathing in this game, as a lot of enemies have a tendency to run away from you one way or another. It especially sucks when you're dying because there's like 0 movement speed and fight for your life in this game, and it runs out super duper fast compared to other Borderlands games. And, the whole problem of I have no range, so that's what's led to most of my deaths. The Titan Robotics facility was also a relative breeze, except for the one part. Yeah, we all know what part this is, by the way. It's that cursed, absolutely terrible turret section. The part that everybody hates. And I shouldn't have to tell you how this went because it went horribly. The only thing I can say that's not terrible about this part is that pre-sequel doesn't have enemy health regeneration in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. That would make this like a billion times worse. But I'm so confused on why they didn't just buff the damage of the turrets. I mean, these things should just one-shot the enemies to make this section bearable at the very least. Essentially, what I would do is go in, let the enemies spawn, and then die, wait for the turrets to deal with them, rinse and repeat. It took me about 6 deaths, Yeah, I forgot how much I hated this section. I mean, it's not even that bad in normal mode, because that's what it's balanced for, but once you get into True and Ultimate Vault Hunter, it just becomes a time sink. The only thing that saves me from the pain of that section is the Felicity fight. You can kind of just see how it went. Once I killed her turrets, she got melted, just like the bosun. And this is another reason I love the Party Popper. It's also quite convenient that, you know, all bosses do have some form of minion or other enemies they spawn, normally for second wins, but you see at this point for kill skills. On Helios Station, there honestly wasn't anything interesting for the most part. There are some things I wanted to note in the research and development level. I mean, first of all, rabid stalkers. These things are an absolute nightmare to deal with in general. Thankfully, stalkers have a tendency to try and, you know, melee attack you. So that means they're in range to use the Party Popper, which is very nice. But dealing with rabid stalkers absolutely sucks because they deal a ton of damage and are super aggressive. Also, turbo fun fact that I found in another playthrough, besides rabid stalkers and, you know, thus rabid enemies being only unique to this level, there's actually tubby stalkers that can spawn only in this level. For a long time, I didn't think there were loot midgets. Okay, well, there aren't loot midgets in pre-sequel, but I didn't think there were tubby enemies either. Apparently I was wrong. Tubby stalkers, they're a thing. Like I always say, you learn something new every time you play pre-sequel, or any Borderlands game for that matter. Like I always say, you learn something new every single time you play a Borderlands game. That's just one thing that makes them so unique. The last thing I wanted to note is actually Dr. Torres. So, long story short, when I heard his voice, it totally reminded me of Pops from Regular Show. I was thinking, alright, I gotta look this up. It has to be the same voice actor. Well, pleasant surprise because I was actually totally wrong. Dr. Torres' voice actor is Christopher Sabat? I am known for butchering names horribly, but he actually voices a ton of characters through several games, anime, and other stuff. He's most well known for a bunch of Dragon Ball Z characters, on top of All Might and, crazy enough, Garter Belt. So pretty awesome voice actor. He also does a lot of like bandits and miscellaneous characters for Borderlands. I always find what voice actors, you know, voice what characters very neat. As bad as the Veins of Helios generally are, they weren't super difficult for me. There were a few fighter jets that were kind of tracking me the entire time, but I believe this level isn't actually bad if you know what you're doing. Like, if you see my path here, you can get to the objective practically instantly, and I could skip a bit more if I wanted to, but I kind of wanted to do the combat in here because it is really easy, considering all the enemies are, you know, close quarters, and there's not too much space for them to run away. On top of there actually being two different factions of enemies, you know, the Boils and the Lost Legion, so they're actually fighting each other half the time, which is very nice. On to the Lunar launching station. Nothing was truly special or even really difficult here, which is pretty nice. The main thing of note, of course, is the little mini game you get to play during this mission. Essentially, you've got these rotating cylinders and you have to hit the blue one and not the red ones. Naturally, with the spread of the Party Popper, you can guess how that went. Okay, to be fair, that was very sloppy on the first one. I should have totally just shot like the top or bottom one instead. I thought for sure it was actually going to be impossible because of the Party Popper being essentially a shotgun. However, just like earlier, third time is the charm, and I managed to hit the probably most difficult reactor the easiest. Actually, I don't know, I feel like the one I did before this is a bit trickier to time. When it rotates like the third one does, that's way easier than the second. After that, it's just a few waves of enemies, which is pretty easy. As for Zarpenuts' fight, it started out a bit scary because I got downed almost instantly and the kill was out of my range. Thankfully, Jack comes in clutch and hit the enemy over to me, giving me my kill skills, and well, yeah, she gets shredded. I swear, this fight was like a third me actually fighting her and 2/3 watching cutscenes. That's how fast it went. It was quite ridiculous. As usual, I just gotta get those kill skills, and that's where the damage really starts to pour in. I actually love the Party Popper at this point. It's just a shame that the range is so terrible. Vorago Solitude took a bit longer than some other levels, even though it's pretty short. The main issue is, of course, it's a huge map, and some of the toughest enemies are here, including Eternals, which will always spawn with a laser weapon. That's the first issue. And once you get their health low enough, they'll start to evolve. And if you can't kill them in time, which is sometimes a problem if I don't have my kill skills, they will become even more powerful and fully regenerate their health. So yeah, slightly tough area. And the laser turrets absolutely suck, I have to say that. Alright, we all know what's at the end of Vorago Solitude. That is everybody's least favorite RK5, also known as Rom-Kampfjet Mark V. I always like starting this out by saying it's literally just like jet fighter in German, which I find hilarious. But you should all be able to tell the major issue with this fight. It is a flying boss. Yes, you heard that right. Flying. The thing I kind of can't kill with this weapon. So you can probably guess how this fight is gonna go. The funny part is that my first death wasn't even to the boss himself, but all the enemies that spawn around the arena. Because they're all dull enemies, they have a bunch of laser weapons and guardians. 'Cause of course. On top of that, it's insane that I got melted this fast, especially because I'm using the Shield of Ages right now, which is pretty much the best shield in the game. I guess it depends on your preferences, but it's the tankiest turtle shield in the game. To save us all a lot of time, this fight might be possible. It's really hard to tell. The main issue, as always, is actually survivability. Not even trying to hit, the flying enemy. It's actually all of the minions that are shredding you constantly, despite having one of the best shields in the game. That's just the problem with not having like a proper Moxie weapon in this build. Actually, now that I think about it, okay, I guess there is the prod gun that you can use for healing, but you kind of get the point. Anyways, that's one of the major problems here. So now, how do I actually hit RK5? Well, he has one very specific attack you can see right here where he dives and goes around the arena for a bit. This is my one option for hitting him. That's actually relatively safe. It is possible to use the jump pads and get up to him, but then I risk getting hit for a ton of damage. And well, let me show the loop a bit better. I wait in this spot by the oxygen generator, both so I can keep my oxygen full, and this is exactly where he lands. It also acts as a great cover for all of his attacks. Once he starts his dive attack, I make sure to reload to get the buffs from reloading my weapons. I guess that's one skill I haven't really mentioned. I get like more fire rate, I think, and then a double shot chance, which increases my damage insanely. And I have just a couple seconds, literally, to get as much damage into RK5 as possible. Even with the Celestial Lawbringer's healing, you can see that I am health gated instantly after this attack and need to go find some enemy to make sure I stay alive. That is the entire combat loop for this fight. As a matter of fact, this clip is my single best attempt, because actually trying to survive is the single hardest part of this fight. And honestly, this fight isn't even the worst thing ever, if that was it. Alright, naturally with most modern bosses, once you get him low enough, RK5 actually gets kind of a new phase, but new attacks. He'll start launching more missiles, he'll start dropping nukes. It's pretty terrible to deal with, let me tell you. The single largest problem with this whole thing is that he has a tendency to never do that initial dive attack again. I don't know if it's just removed from the attack pool or he's just way less likely to do it, but for a solid 15 minutes I was just surviving and I couldn't get him to do it. It could also be like a positioning thing, but I heavily doubt that. Which leaves the only option of this fight to use the jump pads and try and figure out his pathing to get close to him. I don't know, this fight is an absolute nightmare. I held out for quite a while, but unfortunately a combination of this missile attack and the doll soldier on that side just got me. There was nothing I could do about it. Even with healing, I still died because there were just too many projectiles to avoid. Quite unfortunate. Even after testing a few different builds and playing as Athena for hopefully more survivability, on top of course her dash and ass-twist movement speed, it's still just impossible, I would say. Okay, not impossible exactly, but surviving all of the attacks and then living to do another damage phase is next to impossible. But I think there is some world, you'd have to be playing Nisha for sure. Athena just doesn't have the damage or like steroids in all of her kill skills to actually deal enough damage per phase. That's why it is maybe possible with Nisha, but I don't think I would have the time to do it. And by that, I mean, you know, I'm trying to get these videos out on a regular basis. My time is valuable, and I can't exactly waste like several days and dozens of hours attempting a single boss like this. And thus, I'll be passing it on to you guys. If you're crazy enough to try anything like this, the primary restriction is just the party popper. You can try whatever gear and anything else you want, because I'm sure there's someone crazy enough out there to actually attempt this and probably beat RK5, but I cannot. So this is where I'll say the run technically ends. You can't beat the game. But for obvious reasons, I'll be continuing to play. You know, I'll just kill him with other guns so that I can see how the rest of the game goes. On to Tycho's ribs. It wasn't anything crazy. I only had one death, which is kind of surprising because like 99% of the enemies here are Guardians and Eternals, which really sucks. But it's a relatively small map and all the fighting is in close quarters, so it's pretty easy. Now, if you're wondering how I'm going to get through the door without using the cannon, I learned very recently, after all of my years of playing pre-sequel, that enemies can shoot the cannon into the door. I actually never thought of that. Elsier isn't that difficult either. Most of the Guardians will try to fight you with melee, and as we already know, I work best at close range, and even the super tough Opha that spawns here was a breeze because she constantly spawns minions. And finally, on to the Sentinel. This boss does fight you with melee range, which is nice. However, yeah, you guys remember Red Belly from earlier and the major problem with that fight? Everybody's favorite bullet reflection? Well, guess what? That's literally one of the Sentinel's main attacks, and it goes about how you would expect. Thankfully, if you can survive for long enough, the Sentinel will start to spawn minions, and it's not even that bad to deal with her bullet reflection attack. You just have to know when to stop shooting. It's as simple as that, funnily enough. Don't shoot against the bullet reflection attack. Huh, who could have guessed? And that's pretty much the main problem with this fight. There is her whole ground surge attack that is usually deadly, or at least health gates you, but if you know how and when to jump, it's pretty easy. Overall, this fight isn't that bad, especially considering I just leave her minions alive so I can use them as second wins if I have to. Rinse and repeat this cycle about 3 times. Once you get to her health, it is even easier. So that's pretty nice. On top of that, the party popper is non-elemental, always, I'm pretty sure. And that makes things a whole lot easier because the Sentinel has different elemental resistances based on her phase. The Empyrean Sentinel is something completely different. She also has a classic 3 phases. I guess the ground Sentinel has 4, you can consider it that, whatever. But instead, her hitbox is up in the sky, which, as you can probably tell by now, is a little difficult to reach. Thankfully, a double jump gives me just enough air to actually hit her in her face. And considering the insane DPS of the party popper, her health bar gets melted really fast, which is nice. The main problem with this fight is all of her minions are Sarah Guardians, which means they're all flying and nearly impossible to hit. That is a mild problem to say the least. And that means a fight for your life is generally going to be death, so I have to be extra careful in this fight. I honestly wish I had more to say about this boss fight, but it's really hard to make pretty much the same gameplay unique and interesting over so much footage, alright? I'm trying my best here. On top of that, I don't want to speed up most of the footage. I am here and you can see just how insanely flashy and unwatchable it practically is. I'm guessing you get the point by now though. The only scary part of this fight is when I got downed, but thankfully, beating any of the Sentinel's phases before she changes does give you a second wind, which is very nice. But as some of you may know, we are not done with the game just yet. Pre-sequel is unfortunately a very short game. but it is made up slightly by the Claptastic Voyage DLC just being like the best DLC in any of the Borderlands games. So naturally, I'm going to be playing it, of course. Pandora was mostly easy because a lot of the enemies are close-range bandits. Unfortunately, the bandits in this DLC can also teleport sometimes, which can be really annoying, and you've also got the bugs being an absolute menace. On top of the classic bandit just running away because they can. Honestly, I'm not sure how the bandit died there. I think it must have been an exploding bug or something like that. So yeah, that's one of my few deaths in here. I also died to an absolute classic corrosive dot after I finished off the last enemy. I should have saved him because I knew I was going down. I just didn't think that far ahead. On top of that, the leeches for this part of the mission just absolutely refused to go into the wall. I'm pretty sure they got stuck on each other or something like that. I had to get a new set, but I've never seen a bug like this before. It's pretty fitting and hilarious considering this is Claptastic Voyage and a lot of the enemies are bugs or viruses, but you get the point. That was really stupid and annoying. For the Denial subroutine fight, it was also extremely easy. You can just see how I am melting him and his tentacles thanks to Nisha's bottom right keystone skill, where I actually deal less gun damage in Showdown, but the projectiles ricochet to other enemies, obviously dealing less damage, and then exploding at the end of Showdown for an insane amount of damage. Of course, I don't think this skill works extremely well. Think I've mentioned it yet, but Nisha's ricochet skills don't work with the party popper because the projectiles do just expire after like a millisecond or two. So yeah, they literally have no range no matter what. The Denial subroutine fight was just 99% waiting for him to change phases and killing all of his minions in between them. Very, very easy. I say that, but my first attempt also was easy. Unfortunately, I died to the minions in like the 4th phase right before I killed him. Next up, Yeah,
that's not a good sign. Hold on, let me work some magic. Wow, system really crashed. Maybe you're not supposed to be in there.
Alright, everyone should know by now that is like my single favorite part of the game right there. I think it was just done so perfectly. On to the self-loathing and despair fight. They're also stupidly easy, extremely tanky, sure, but they have plenty of minions throughout the arena. As we all know, they kind of just get, well, melted at a certain point. The Cortex battle and Shadow Trap fight, at least first one, was stupidly easy because it's just a ton of enemies at close range, very easy to shred. But the second Shadow Trap fight, aka Eclipse, got a whole lot more difficult. The main issue is that Eclipse deals insane amounts of damage, and without using like the Celestial Lawbringer for healing, I don't have much survivability around him. On top of that, the minions for this fight are all flying bugs, which can be a major issue. Thankfully, the bugs are pretty stupid and tend to wander towards me, which allowed me to get a couple second wins, and eventually beat this fight second try at the very least. This is also one of the rare times that I've actually played the fight smart. I was hiding behind pillars half the time, and even used the cheese jump pad to hide from missiles during some of his phases. Overall, this might have been the most difficult fight in the game, excluding RK5 and what's coming next. It took me about 20 minutes to actually beat, which is pretty insane. But of course, we all know the third Shadow Trap fight, Eos, and yeah, it's exactly what it looks like. I can't really beat him. Now, this is for several reasons. First of all, Eos does an insane amount of damage, naturally. Second of all, of course, he's flying. But that's actually not the biggest problem. It's kind of fascinating why this fight truly is impossible. Even this clip shows it really well. Look at how he's facing, right? Eos has a tendency to face the player when you're trying to attack him. It makes sense, but it really sucks for something like this because, as you can see, even if I get close to him, he just changes the direction he faces. That's legitimately the main problem with this entire fight. It's just because of his bizarre pathing? Not really that, but just how the fight works. It's really weird. I did a ton of testing with this, and right now I'm playing Athena because she actually has her dash melee skill. That's the best way to get closest to him. And look, even if I can damage him, with which I really should have shot there, I don't know why I kept meleeing, theoretically I could have done the tiny bit of damage, but it wouldn't have been enough to matter. On top of that, the party popper is only really good with Nisha. Yeah, I've tried it and it does practically nothing with Athena. It might be good on like Claptrap, maybe Wilhelm and Aurelia, Jack if you use it right, but obviously duplicating the pistol gives you the most DPS, on top of Nisha's other pistol and insane skills in general. So unfortunately, I say this fight is truly impossible. It's just a combination of very bizarre circumstances, obvious, the biggest of which is just why he faces you constantly and then turns around. It's really weird stuff, but as always, that's the beauty of these runs. Like I think I said earlier, you learn something new every single time, and yeah, I never would have expected that Eos does this because I've never gotten this close to him before. Really weird stuff. It's almost like the game doesn't intend for us to play it this way. Well, it's an absolute shame I couldn't truly beat the run how I wanted to. I kind of expected that with the party popper. Overall though, it was still an insanely fun run, and quite interesting. Again, we would have never learned about Eos's odd interaction when you get too close. I certainly never knew about that. I'm guessing most of you didn't either. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and please consider subscribing if you haven't, and maybe supporting me. It would help me out a ton, more than you can ever imagine. But as always, thank you all for watching. I seriously appreciate it, and a special thank you to my channel members. All of you guys are awesome. This is going to be Enzo from Lookintogaming, signing out.